So neurodiversity, I think one of the most important things to understand about it is that it's a strength-based concept and perspective, that this paradigm rather than a deficit-focused perspective. And it's an umbrella term. It describes all the different and unique ways that people's brain works.
Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Caprino, and welcome to my podcast, Finding Brave. I've created this show for everyone who longs to create something bold and brave in their life, to rise up, speak up, and stand up for who they are, and to reach their highest and biggest visions. Each week, I'll be speaking with inspiring guests from all walks of business, leadership, entertainment, the creative arts, and the entrepreneurial world. And they'll be sharing their intimate stories of finding brave and offer their best strategies for building your most rewarding, joyful, and meaningful life, business, and career. Hey folks, is it finally time to make a big change in your career, but you just can't figure out how to do it? It's time for help and time to invest in yourself and finally understand and shift what hasn't been working for you. Join me as I coach and guide you through powerful, proven steps that will unlock your fullest and happiest potential. I've worked with thousands of professionals across 6 continents, and the results have been transformative for them. For a limited time, also take advantage of my 10% discount for you, my amazing Finding Brave listeners. Save 10% off my one-on-one 6-session career and leadership breakthrough program and my most powerful you video training course that helps you close the 7 most damaging power and confidence gaps that are in the way of your ultimate success and happiness. You can work with me in both of these programs for the comfort of your own home at your own pace. Now's the time. Don't wait. Build the career you're ready for. Check out the show notes below for details, and I can't wait to support you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Finding Brave. This is coming to you in mid-July. We're not quite there yet, but it's been hot where I am. I'm in Connecticut. I hope you're all doing well, and I'm so excited, levitating, frankly, to have our amazing guest, Dr. Maureen Dunne, here with us. Maureen, thank you for joining. I know you're crashingly busy with your children and everything you've got going on for summer and the launch of your book. I'm so honored and grateful that you could join us today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Can't wait to dig into this topic. And I was telling Maureen that I have this funny reaction sometimes, as you all know who've listened. I cry on the show because it touches me in a way that I'm sometimes surprised about. And today is no different. This is such an important topic. We are talking about navigating neurodiversity, key organizational steps for embracing autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and other neurological differences. And this is such an important topic that I think, and you're going to tell us, you're going to correct me if I say anything that's incorrect, please, because I know you're part of this community as well, but I think it's still so misunderstood, so misdiagnosed, and you're going to tell us exactly why that is. And because I work with so many people in corporate life, I think we're mishandling it in so many ways, from the C-suite on down to HR to hiring. So let me tell you about Maureen, because it's so darn inspiring. Maureen Dunne is a cognitive scientist, neurodiversity expert, global keynote speaker, board director, and business leader with over 2 decades of experience helping organizations build thriving cultures. She has served as a senior advisor to some of the world's top corporate brands, Fortune 500 companies, universities, venture capital funds, and government officials. Oh my gosh, including the Lego Foundation, Cornell University, members of Congress, and more. And she recently co-created the Executive Education Program for Business Leaders. Wow, on future-ready leadership at Harvard Kennedy School. Holy crow. There's an incredible bio I want you to read in the show notes, people. But this really, I don't know, brought tears to my eyes. The first community college graduate to be named a Rhodes Scholar. What an honor. She is also an elected official, helping to build the talent pipeline with community colleges, representing over 12 million students at the national level. And you received a BA and MA from the University of Chicago and a I don't even know what MSc stands for. Obviously, Masters of
Masters
Science.
of Science.
There we
Yeah.
go. How do I not know that? Oh, I think because in the US it's MS, and this
That's
is
right.
London.
Yeah.
There we go. From the
Mhm.
London School of LSE. Oh my gosh, I went for a year to the University of London. Oh my gosh, lucky you.
Cool.
And doctorate from University of Harvard. And you have
No,
3 children.
that's actually Oxford, the doctorates that was while I was on the Rhodes Scholarship.
I see. Oh my gosh, it's just too
Yeah.
incredible. Now let's dive in here to the most important questions, because I only have you for 30 minutes, which is going to be hard. But can you please define neurodiversity for us in a way that we can take action about, understand it? Can you? Because I don't think we get it quite yet. Tell us.
Sure. Yeah. So neurodiversity, I think one of the most important things to understand about it is that it's a strength-based concept and perspective, that this paradigm rather than a deficit-focused perspective. And it's an umbrella term. It describes all the different and unique ways that people's brain works. And someone who identifies as being neurodivergent or neurodistinct or neurospicy, there's lots of different terms that people in the community use, means that that person has a brain that works different from what we would call the neuronormative majority.
Wow.
So that's sort of high level. I'm sure you'll
Yeah,
have a
I'm
lot
going to
of
dig in and
questions. Yeah.
and please, I I so want to understand this. So if I phrase things in a way that's offensive or wrong, I want you to correct me right here. Don't be shy.
I appreciate that.
Will you
Yeah.
please?
Sure.
So can you tell us why, we're not wanting a pejorative look at the situation, but that's what we're getting, I think, in many organizations. What are we getting wrong? Why is it so hard for us to embrace neurodiversity? What are we not understanding as human beings and
Yes,
leaders?
there's
And
a lot of layers, I think, there. I wish we had, I feel like we could talk for 10 hours, right? Like
you'll come back
there's
10
so much
times.
there. Yeah, I could do that. Um, but you know, there's so many things to unpack there. I mean, there's some simple things like just how the standardized interview processes work at most organizations, in many cases, even inadvertently excludes neurodivergent talent. There's just ways in which we're used to operating, right? Where, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've even talked to friends that are CEOs, and I'm trying to influence them, right? So I'm like, hey, tell me how do you make your decisions, right? Like if you're going to advance talent or hire someone to begin with. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard things like, well, there's the beer test, right? Like, is this someone I want to have a beer with?
I
Okay,
know.
well, right. So, and there's so many roles that are going unfilled, right? There's in many domains, we need problem solvers, we need skills, but so the way in which we're used to interviewing, I think, is we're not interviewing for the kind of skills and the talent that's needed to fill certain jobs. Like there's this focus on things that usually have nothing to do with the job. So that's one issue. But I think also there are some deeper issues that are harder to fix in overnight, or even with simple training, and it's just deeply ingrained biases in our collective culture. And being a cognitive scientist, right, so that's part of my book. I have a chapter called Tricks Minds Play. That's the title of it, and it tries to at least make people more aware of the different kinds of unconscious biases, so that it's just how our brains are wired to take mental shortcuts, right? And this to being more aware of that, and where we can be making decisions that aren't great decisions because we're sort of on autopilot, I think is at a deeper level is helpful. And being aware of like the familiarity bias, for instance, where just without even realizing it, a lot of people just have an instinctive reaction to when they hear autism, for instance, and because
And what
they
do
have,
they think, Maureen? If you, and
well,
you
like I
are,
think what comes to mind are these images from like certain movies that are super unrepresentative of the rich diversity in the community, like Rain Man, or it's always the tech genius, or it mostly boys. So there's just the rich diversity and complexity and personalities and amazing people that are autistic, for instance, get reduced,
to a
just like
stereotype
that
that
to,
is
well, it's just instinctive, like, assuming, okay, this is someone who's probably has uh, is not going to be a people person, which is not always, there's extroverted autistic people, so like, just, I just think it's easy to like typecast and characterize, um I think what helps, that's going to take some time, but I talk a lot of this in my book, is that if we can normalize these conversations, like
right,
what you're trying to do here with me now,
right.
I've just even seen it. It's been incredible over the last few months, even just like there's a lot of people in top leadership positions that are neurodivergent and feel like they can't disclose because, it'll hurt their professional career. But the more like it's normalized and we can talk, hey, why do we all have to be the same? Like there's advantages to us working together and, it's, including people that, that have different ways of seeing the world and thinking. And so the more like just these conversations, I think, get normalized in our culture, the more we'll start seeing the broad representation, even in leadership. And then, and then I think that helps change how people, when they're on the brains are on autopilot of like, okay, wow, wait, this other person so there's different types of even autistic people, and it's a really wide range of interesting people. And oh wait, there's that, senior VP at, this technology company, or this marketing expert that is also autistic. Your mind starts to, I think, realize like reality.
Can I ask
You
you? Oh
get
my
more
gosh,
examples that allow, the mind to process more objective reality when you're making those decisions, because you're just not familiar, and you have very little familiarity and very small number of examples. That's what you automatically, without thinking about it, really, assume that what autism looks like, or ADHD looks like, or dyslexia.
holy crap! I want to ask you. Tell me again. Tell me if what I'm saying is, oh gosh, Kathy, you missed the mark. But as you were discussing it, I'm 64 years old. So when I was in the corporate world, senior women were not really common. I feel like what you're describing is what I went through in
Mhm.
some ways, being a woman forging a senior level role.
Right.
There were stereotypes about women. Women are
Hmm.
emotional. Women don't make
Right.
good decisions. Women are less good with money. Women want to stay home with the children
Right.
because
And there's
they,
still, and we've made progress, but
yeah.
it's not perfect. Right.
Is it
But
similar that,
in some ways, I think it is, because, I mean, and then, there's the extra complexity. Obviously, there's a lot of neurodivergent women then that are,
right,
are people that belong to multiple underrepresented categories.
right,
But I think it is in the sense that, there's these sort of ways, just the social clubs, right? And how
right,
decisions get made. And neurodivergent people, women have historically been excluded from those
right.
conversations, and other underrepresented groups. And I think neurodivergent, I'm probably one of the few, there's not too many openly neurodivergent people that are at any leadership tables, right? And so I think that, yeah, I think most of us don't feel particularly welcome, in that capacity. I have a friend in the UK that constantly reminds me of, okay, neurodivergent leaders, we're not generally asked to be at the leadership table, but we pull up our own chair.
I love it.
This is my
I
friend
mean,
Shirley in
you
London. Yeah.
you
Or she actually
truly
she's in Manchester.
You
Yep.
truly are groundbreaking, because it strikes me that you lead with, I am neurodivergent. And this is why you need to hire me. And this is why you need to read my book. And, is that true that
Well,
you're,
in my case, it's a, I mean, this is my, in addition to all of that, this is my focus of expertise that I've pursued for decades. I've been doing this way before, like, there was even really much public awareness at all. So it's been interesting for me to be part of that for so long and be, I had a friend last week say to me, wow, I just found out about you, and you've been waving the flag out there for 20 plus years. But I think it's been interesting to see that, like, how things have shifted in society. Like, there's starting to be a lot of public awareness. So it's like things have changed in a positive direction, quite a bit, but at the same time, we're so far off
right?
with
It's
actually what I call authentic neuroinclusion. And but this is not just, it's not just lived experience. I mean, my doctorate at Oxford, my research at University of Chicago, I've been focusing on this since I was 17 years old.
my
In
gosh.
whether, the research, the advocacy, it was all part of the mission, I guess. And
I'm
I
dying
think
to
now the
know.
world's finally ready to, maybe, I'm hoping, is finally ready to have more of these conversations where there could really be a big impact.
Oh, I'm so excited. All right. I'm dying to know, I was a former therapist, and I love talking about how we're formed. So I just have one tiny question, but then I have 500 others. Um, can I just ask you honestly, did your childhood and what you experienced, you mentioned that you took my dominant action style quiz. Thank you for doing that. And you are the advocator. And I said to you, if you didn't come out out of the five, I forget how many there are action styles, I would chuck the whole quiz, because you are that. But can I ask you, just on a personal note, did you experience difficulties in childhood that made you want to be a pioneer in this field?
Yeah, I mean, my childhood, I, was complicated, I think, because I didn't know the full extent of my neurodivergency until when I started to become more of a teenager. So through childhood, though, I knew I was hyperlexic, and I was reading, fluently by 3. I'd come home every summer with giant stacks of books, and I'd go visit my grandparents, and they would kind
At
of scold
3.
me, yeah, I mean, but I was doing it. I realized later, when I started studying cognitive science, like, that, how, like, ways in which I was processing information was different than the neuronormative majority, and I could just, yeah, read very fast, process, like, sort of pattern abstract certain, certain things. So I could get through material very fast in that way.
And your
But
grandparents scolded you? Go out and play with the
well,
kids?
they were, my grandparents were from, they were immigrants from northern Italy, from the Florence area, and so I spent a lot. They're just such lovely people. I love them so much. Yeah, they were a little less scholarly, I guess, than my parents, in a way, and
I
so
see.
they just thought it was a little weird. Yeah, this is too intense. Why are you obsessed with reading, and just go out and play with the other kids, this kind of thing. But and then I was really into music. So I was competing as a pianist, like, from a very young age too. So I was like, I just had a really weird, like, in so many ways, I just had a abnormal childhood. So I knew I was different. But for a while, like, in elementary school, I was being told it was just because I was gifted. And I kind of, you kind of know it's more than that.
Wow.
But it just became more and more obvious
Yeah.
once I started to get, getting closer to the teenage years. And then, just my skill sets became much more uneven. So high school was where I really struggled a lot,
I'm sure.
and became much more aware of, like, just,
Wow.
that. yeah, like I just had a lot of intense interests that weren't the same as my peers, and was, sensitive to a lot of auditory noise, like in the, cafeteria, and just a lot of, so that's where I, yeah, where it really started to become more clear. And that's part of what ended up becoming part of my community college journey. I ended up graduating high school early,
Wow.
and enrolling in community college, and then from there I transferred, University of Chicago. And
It's look at me, here I go, crying on my own podcast another time. Why am I crying? Because you've done what, and please take this the right way, what so many people I'm inspired by have done. They've turned their mess into a message. I'm not saying your life was a mess. I'm saying the way that the world interacts with us makes it feel messy sometimes. But our mess is a gift, usually. When we're different, when we see the world different, when we stand out, when we're not like other people, if we can only see that there are gifts to that, and God darn it, does the world need those gifts? Look at us.
and my mom, so I don't know if, I don't want to start crying, so I probably shouldn't go into too much
Go
of it,
ahead.
but
Everybody
she was
cries.
but she was, I was so close to her. She was such a big part of, like even when I was in high school, like I had a high school counselor accuse me of having an eating disorder, which I didn't have, because she'd see me try to escape the lunchroom and things like that. And I think she, but then my mom would pick me up sometimes and to give me a break and take me out to lunch and stuff. But what was, what was really hard for me then was that, I mean, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, terminal breast cancer, as a teenager. And so she was a fighter. She fought through it longer than any doctors even expected. But I did lose her fairly young. So it was that then kind of it was I know the focus of your podcast is like finding brave, and I feel like I had to like find inside myself like all the encouragement and things that she, like the role she used to play in my life. Like it's so hard to lose a mom,
Especially your
and then,
hero. She was a hero for you.
well,
It
and then
seems.
when you're still forming your identity too, and you're still, and if you're neurodivergent, it's more complicated.
Wow, Maureen.
But I think then, like going through that process, it 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 made me a braver person. Like it made me, it was really, really, really hard. But it made me find these internal resources to take bolder action and do things later that I felt were the right things to do. And which, I don't know. I mean, I think it's because I had to kind of like, I didn't have these people that I could go to say, oh, am I doing the right thing?
You had to
What
be
should I
that
do? Yeah,
person.
I had to
You
be,
had to
had to be that to myself,
internalize.
and kind of get stronger inside, have a stronger sense of who I was as a person and what made me me. So I went through this long process, like especially in my 20s, where, I feel like at some point I almost felt like I was living life backwards. I know it sounds weird, but like where
Wow.
you do that deeper. I did a lot of this deeper work
Wow.
that I wouldn't
Early.
have anticipated doing, much later in life.
What a
And
story. How old were you
yeah,
when she passed?
I had just turned 24, but she was sick since I was like 16. So it was sort of like, a long,
Wow. What a
process.
story.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you went through it. All right. Now, I have one other question, then I want to get into what we have to teach for organizations and leaders and really give them the understanding, because I think we talk, just like a lot of other issues, we talk around it, but we don't tell the hard truth. Like in a minute, we'll get to, your friends saying, yeah, the beer,
The beer
thing.
test.
I think that people hear us saying, you can't just hire people that look and feel and sound like you. There's reasons you cannot do that for the health of your organization.
Right.
But people people are limited. I'm really getting the feeling the human brain, holy cow, didn't really develop the way we needed it to. But before we go there, where we're really going to talk about why this is essential, this isn't just a nice to have.
Right.
I read that in your notes, 1 out of 5 people are estimated to be neurodivergent. Can you answer a question that I know I hear and people don't want to talk about it? It seems that there is much more neurodiversity now. Is that incorrect? And it's just we didn't recognize it for the past 100 years, or have things contributed to the neurodivergent mind and
Yeah,
behavior?
I think it's an interesting um, conversation. There's always been neurodivergent people. So I think most of what we're seeing now is that there were large portions of society that a lot of people that just weren't being identified early. Um, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I know a lot of women are particularly, it's not uncommon to be diagnosed much later in life because girls present differently than boys for especially things like autism and ADHD, and we're still learning a lot about these gender differences there. But I think, look, neurodiversity has always been there. I think it's just there's more public awareness. And I think, if you go back 20, 30 years, I just think that there were a lot of kids that were maybe identified as like the quirky kids in the classroom or the bad kids in the classroom, but they weren't being identified as needing specific support. We were, yeah.
Right. It like
So
you, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but like your counselor saying she's got an eating disorder. I interviewed Peter Shankman. Do you know Peter? You know, ADHD,
mhm,
neurodivergent, and now he, is consulting with organizations. You two would love talking, but he mentioned that the dopamine that he needed in his brain led him. I mean, he could read at a very early age. He was bored in school, so he was the clown, the
right,
class clown, to give him the dopamine, if I'm understanding
right,
correctly, rush he needed. Well,
right.
teachers were like,
Serotonin. Yeah,
he's really,
yeah.
he's a disturbance and he's a problem. Nobody understood
Well,
him.
and even now there's just there are a lot of great teachers out there that aren't really being given the tools or the resources or the training to understand this, right? And they're, understaffed, or it's not easy to personalize approaches, right? When you have a class of so there's, I think, a lot we could do to better support teachers from
Right.
earlier on. So I do like to say, like, even though my book is more focused on employment and pathways to employment and the workforce, these conversations need to start earlier in the
Right.
schools. Yeah.
That's so right. All right. Now let's dig in. You wrote this book. It's your life's work. What do we need to understand? Let's start with the things you see in all of your advising and board work and working with members of Congress. What are we not doing? And how do we
Yeah.
actually take steps to do it right here? Listen to the podcast, people, and take these steps. Give us what we need to do,
Yeah,
Maureen.
and you brought up too, about like, well, what is the mind, like we talked a little bit earlier about, like, there needs to be this sort of mind shift
Right.
in understanding that the diversity is the strength, that is an asset to an organization. And, if we can get to a point where people genuinely understand that and value that, then there's a lot of strategies in my book of what, there's a framework of a pyramid of neuroinclusion, and what I call the 3 Cs, which is codification plus conduct drives culture. So we could get into
Mm.
that. But I think high level, there's a concept I bring up in the book called neurodiversification, and why that's more important than culture fit. Because going back to, like, the beer test, we're just, I think it's just how things have always been done, and we end up as humans being vulnerable to always, like, falling into this pattern of, okay, what do we know? What's the familiar? Things that kind of fall outside that range, we're not really sure how to judge it or what to think about it. And so making a conscious effort of better understanding that, especially in the future economic climate we have in front of us, that for companies to not only survive but to thrive, in my opinion, cognitive and experiential diversity is going to be the difference maker. And I call that you want to neurodiversify your human resources portfolio, because if you have a group, or if all your employees or board members or senior leadership are too similar, right, in their cognitive, their experiential tendencies, their cultural backgrounds, gender, if there's too much similarity, there's inevitably going to be blind spots, and there's going to be missed opportunities. There's going to be a misunderstanding of risks. You want that diversity, at the strategy tables, at the leadership tables, at all levels of your organization. I think that that's super important. And a week and a half ago, I was in London. I was a keynote at London Tech Week, and I started out because you asked me about when we talked about the hyperlexia in the beginning of this, you probably appreciate it. So I started out my keynote about Lewis Carroll's book, the in the Looking Glass, because it talks about the Red Queen's race, and the idea there was that Alice and the Red Queen, that Alice, she's like running faster and faster and faster, and she eventually is like, well, however fast I keep running, I don't seem to be getting somewhere else. I should, I'm sort of paraphrasing, right, like we should be getting somewhere else. And the Queen's like, well, you have to keep running faster and faster just to not get behind. And I use that as a way to introduce where the world is going with. There's so much conversation about AI, and of course, yes, organizations need to integrate AI if they're going to stay competitive, but there will come a point where that's everybody has access to that, and that's not going to be, you're just going to need that as an organization to not fall behind. But what's going to be the driver of superior and functional importance is your people, and the cognitive and experiential diversity, and people that could bring different things to the table, and we need everybody's contribution. So that's sort of the big picture I bring, is that we really need everybody's contributions, and
I have a question.
Solve those problems. Yeah.
Oh, I love to hear that. I mean, AI at first, like chat GPT, I resisted. Oh, now I'm on it, 4 times a day, but it doesn't replace everything.
Right.
I mean, humans are so crazy. We're like, woohoo, here's the next best thing, and everything else is terrible. No, this is iterative. It makes me nuts. That's another story. But because you're a neuroscientist, Maureen, can I ask you something? Mm-hmm. Isn't there such a thing? This is to normalize, so everyone listening, we get that you're comfortable with the familiar. Isn't there a familiarity bias in the brain, and it's evolutionary? Right. It comes from millions of years ago, that what looked different was a threat.
Was a threat for sure. It's just now we live in a very different world. Right. That's much more complex, and so it gets in the way now of genuine inclusivity. And
so what I'm saying to you people is, you're going to have it. You're going to want to be with people that look like you, sound like you, match you. That's that's an instinct. We're asking you to gain awareness of when you're feeling like, this person's different and it makes me uncomfortable. I don't know how to answer them. I don't know how they're talking very fast, whatever it is. I'm stereotyping. Right. Take a breath, but we're asking you to change. We're asking you not.
And at least to start out, to become, rather than the first thing that comes through your mind, sticking with that, like be curious, right? Be curious about that person. Let me learn more about them. Let me reserve judgment and be open to changing. Being open to updating beliefs and ways of thinking that are no longer serving us. But I think the first the first step is to be proactive, be aware of the bias, and be proactive in getting to know people from very different backgrounds and spending time with people that are different from you, and just being curious.
Oh, you make it very simple. I love it. So let's talk about, I think there's probably several levels, the interview process, because you're talking to senior leaders, but this trickles way down to the manager who's hiring, to the HR person who doesn't have this training. So, because I'm a career coach, we're always looking at who gets identified, who gets the interview, who moves through the interview, who's selected, who's promoted, who's retained, who's developed, right? All through those steps, we need new ways to look at human potential, I think. But we can't talk about that in 5 minutes.
And to evaluate and assess talent that isn't going to be obvious from a social verbal based interview process.
So where do we begin with the interview process to make changes, Maureen? What do we do? What do companies, organizations
first, I think,
do?
Being open to what we would call non-traditional interview processing, where it's not this standardized one size fits all approach, but realizing that there's better ways to assess talent, be more skill focused, and put more effort and thought into the role that you're recruiting for, so there is not this like standardized approach, and allowing, I think it's just really helped. Some simple things are incredibly helpful, like
let's hear it.
Allowing neurodivergent people to or allowing all employees, whether they disclose or not, to showcase their skill sets in other ways, bring in a portfolio of prior work, be able to show what they can do for the organization, rather than forcing them into this constant presentation mode where they have to act the part, rather than just saying, hey, look at, this is what I can do. Look, I can build these things. I can code, I can do this amazing design work, and showing what one can do. Because I think that's really helpful. And then also there's different platforms out there that are being researched that are more based on there's game-based assessments out there that again can be more objective, of like understanding where someone's skills are, what skills that are relevant, matching those skills to roles. And some of the work I do is also, there's a coaching methodology I use where I help candidates and job seekers better understand, and students as well, better understand what their strengths are, so that they also can feel more confident, but also, if they're assuming that they are interviewing at a neurodivergent friendly place or neurodiversity friendly place, that they can at least have that kind of awareness of their strengths, right, to lead with that, and have these conversations with their employers. So I think also just employees can, but I think that it's also important, even that there's the other side of it, of just, even if someone gets hired, and this is based on this pyramid of neuroinclusion I brought up, is for everyone, not just neurodivergent people, for everyone to thrive, though it's important that the culture, it's not just policies and
performative, I check the box.
Yeah. Right. And it's funny you brought that, because I had another chapter that's thinking outside, check the boxes, and this is the whole chapter. But it's right, where there's at a deeper cultural level and appreciation for experiential neurodiversity and cognitive diversity, and people that are just have different life experiences and ways of thinking and doing things that they're bringing to the table. And that the culture is one that it's safe for people to be who they are, so they can do their best work. And I think that benefits everyone. It's not just the neurodivergent people, but it
course.
allows people to just be more productive, like, and ask for what they need to be more productive.
Oh, you're talking about a utopia, which is so far away.
Yeah,
All right, I know you have
but
to
we just
go.
got to start somewhere, right?
We have to start. I have a few more questions, then I promise I'll let
Yeah.
you go. As I said, there are people in my life in a lot of ways, from clients to family members who are neurodivergent. When you talk about neurodiversity friendly companies, a lot of these people and a lot of my clients, they're so far from feeling comfortable to talk about their neurodivergence.
Right.
They are not going to do it. And they know they can't do it. So people listening who are saying, yes, this is me, and where do I find this world where I can be me? Where do folks who are looking for roles find neurodiversity friendly cultures? How do they find it?
Right.
Yeah.
I think talking to people in the community, people like me and others who work closely with organizations, helping them become neuro inclusive. And that's why, I think my approach, I call it, it's not cosmetic surgery, but it's gene therapy, because because when you get to the point where you have to get to the point where this is normalized, these conversations are normalized. And that's also why I was like, am very visible, because I can't be out there saying that we need to normalize this and have these conversations and help younger generations and other people in leadership positions if I'm not willing to be to disclose myself. So I think it's one of those things where the more people that start to feel comfortable and are in safe environments in their, the more others will do it. And then others will see that, like, those who are in high level positions, especially already, or whatever position they're in, if they're still thriving at the organization after disclosure, people notice that.
Right.
That's a signal that that's a great organization to work for if you're a neurodivergent person. And so I think, we look closely at, well, who's public, who's visible, who's disclosing, and how did that impact that person and their career. And
Wow.
and then, and the more people that are out there just having these conversations and feel comfortable doing it, I think the more then, there'll be that change on a broader scale, where it will become more normalized and more companies will just come on board, and there'll be that shift.
Are you
But
going
I
to do
do
a
think it's
podcast, Maureen, about this with
um
senior leaders who are neurodiverse?
uh, would be probably something that should exist out in the world.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm waiting for it.
I'll see if I
Are
could
there
fit
right
it in
now?
here.
Yeah, really, after your
Yeah.
seventh book. And are there ratings like best place to work? Are there current ratings and
Not yet. I think that there's people working on similar things, and I have a process that leads to certification for companies, but it's a
wow.
long process. But I think we're, there's a lot of programs out there, bigger companies that do these neurodiversity at work programs, but they started out, a lot of them, as pilots, and they've been very successful overall. But I think now, the approach I'm recommending is, let's go beyond that now. We're ready to go beyond that. Let's change our organizational culture so everybody can feel like they can belong, can do their best work, be productive. That, there could be strategies for recruitment, but let's get beyond these sort of more separate pathways
Right.
to employment that aren't really impacting the culture of that organization on a day-to-day
We need
basis
the
all the
gene
time.
therapy like you talk about. Oh, is there anything else that you would feel you would regret not having said here? Anything else that the thousands of people
Um,
listening need to hear from you?
sure. I guess it's 6 we focus so much on people in leadership positions, and that every level of an organization, I think, is important, plays a role in creating these kind of organizations. But there is something I do bring up a lot, and I brought it up in my book as well, about just more broad leadership, and that it's not about a title or a specific position or even a role. That it's everybody from where they're at has some ability to make decisions that can influence. And, I think that whatever someone's official role in the organization, or even if, you're a sibling or a parent or a community member or an elected official, like there's, I think the important thing is that for wherever you are, you don't have to be the CEO, you don't even have to be the manager, you could still play a proactive role in creating a more inclusive world. Talk positively about, neurodivergent people. Look for the strengths. Sometimes we focus so much on the deficits, we don't even see the strengths. And then the neurodivergent people they stop seeing the strengths in themselves. And so, talk about the strengths. Tell stories to your friends, to your coworkers, that really shatter those stereotypes about someone that's neurodivergent, because I think all these conversations really help chip away those stereotypes and those biases. And there's not gonna be one person that changes the world in this. We need everyone's contributions, and and so that, I think everybody can play a role.
That is so beautiful. There's nothing more to say. That is just so, and I feel like it goes beyond, well, there's nothing more to say, but here Kathy keeps talking. It goes beyond neurodiversity. It's embracing the human spirit in any form that it shows up.
It's about humanity, and neurodiversity is part of being human.
That's it. Oh, I'm so grateful for your work, and so inspired. Where do we soak it up? Where do we get your book? Where do we learn more about all of your training and your certification? Where do we send people, Maureen?
We could go to my website for the Neurodiversity Edge, which is www.neurodiversityedge.com. So that talks about the book and my approach, and there's links about trainings and keynotes and workshops that you can reach out to me. In terms of where to get the book, it's available wherever books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You could order it through your local bookstore as well. And there's also, I know a lot of busy people like audiobooks. So there is an audiobook version as well that you can get on Amazon or Audible.
Have you done many TED Talks, TEDx Talks?
I'm hoping one day to do a TED Talk. I've done a lot. I do regular keynote.
I want to see the TED Talk get 20 million views. All right. From my mouth to our mouth to God's ears. Thank you again, Maureen. I find this so deeply, deeply inspiring. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for taking time to join me.
Yeah, no, I loved our conversation. I just am inspired by your work too. And thank you so much for inviting me and for caring so much about this topic and wanting to bring it to the world. So thank you too. Beautiful. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, people, please, I'm asking you, whoever hears this, share it with 10 people. Look at me choking up. Write a comment wherever you see it. Forward it to HR, forward it to your leaders. And I listen to what Maureen has done. I think it's so brave. It's the definition of finding brave in every way. Could we all just be a little more brave here? And, wherever you can make that impact. I so love what you said. We don't need to have manager or CEO in our title to lead, to influence, to make a positive difference. And this would be an amazing way to do it. Please, wherever you see it, share a question and we'll do our best to answer it. And I really hope this inspired you as much as it did me. I hope you have a wonderful 2 Finding Brave weeks, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much. Thanks again, Maureen.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. Kathy here. So are you thinking about launching a new podcast, or have you been at it a while and recognize it's time for more or better production help to create the best podcast you can? I totally understand. I've been podcasting for over 6 years, and I know how challenging it can be. That's why I'm really excited to share some key information about the great production team I'm using now called We Edit Podcasts. I've been working with them for well over a year, and I've been so happy with the results.
They're a full-service production agency, and their services give me access to a wonderful team of seasoned audio engineers and editors who help create a polished professional sound. And they work hard to ensure that my particular podcasting approach and style comes through in every episode. They also help me make sure that my guests are reflected in the best possible light through the creation of terrific show notes, which is an important part of the show for me. Their process is easy and streamlined, and their responsiveness and customer service is terrific too. If you're ready for better production help, definitely check them out and take advantage of their free trial episode, allowing you to sample their process and quality to see if it's a great fit for you. I'm confident you'll love them. Just go to the link weeditpodcasts.com/findingbrave. That's my special link for you, and book your free call today. Happy podcasting. Thanks so much for joining us today. And please don't forget to check out findingbrave.org for more programs, resources, and tips. And tune in next time for your weekly dose of Finding Brave.